Yeah, hi. Hello and welcome to Escrow Talks. Today we have with us Tanya Naik. Tanya is a pass out from XLRI in 2008. 8 years she has been with Citibank, donning multiple hats across product and business. And then she led PayPal for almost 3 years, and then she moved to Pine Labs. Today she is leading the charge at Pine Labs for online and omni-channel businesses. Other side of Tanya, she is musician at heart and has done multiple musical renditions across different social media platforms. So welcome, Tanya. I think first things first, I would want to understand more from you on your journey, so far, more detailed one, where we would want to understand you as a human being, as a person. And then, of course, we'll dive deep into further course of action. Yeah, over to you.
Awesome, and thanks for such a kind introduction, Amit. I'm really happy to be talking to you about so many interesting conversations that I'm sure we'll have. So, a little bit about me. As Amit rightly pointed out, I'm a pass out from XLRI. So, my journey prior to that was mainly in the commerce stream. I'm a BCom graduate from Sydenham College in Mumbai. So, I had a I would say, a very traditional upbringing in that sense. And of course, startups were not like a very talked about conversation back when I was growing up, at least. So it was a very clear path that I was sort of looking to follow, which was to complete my graduation, then get on to my MBA, and from there on find a job that that I will stick on and learn from. So that's really how the first half of my life, at least till I was about 22, it was panning out like this. And so while I was in XLRI, of course, it was a pretty, I would say, challenging yet a rewarding time because MBA, for those who have never worked in the past and then go straight from school or college into a B school, I think it turns out to be some sort of a reality check because when I was growing up, I was pretty much like in the top tier, top performers in my school and college, and always used to kind of coming first. And then when you go into an MBA, obviously the percentiles kick in, and you're no longer in the top quartile. So it's a big reality check because you kind of are really faced with the world where there are so many bright people who are out there competing together with you. So it made you humble also, but it also taught you to kind of face the real world and get better at what you are. And so XLRI for me, more than just the knowledge of learning about business administration, it was more on the HR front where I learned about how to deal with serious competition and how to still emerge out of it. So the 2 years for me was really that. I got placed into Citi, which was again a top tier bank at that point, and still is quite a large bank globally. So this was I joined in as a management associate in 2008. So again, for those who are as old as me would know that 2008 was a pretty, I would say, bad phase for the banking industry. There was the subprime crisis, which had which had pretty much taken the entire world down when it came to banks and bonds and the debt markets, equity markets, everything crashed. And the pretty much untouchable banks, which included the likes of Citi as well, had to go through some serious trouble in terms of resurrection of themselves. So that was a time when I actually joined Citi. And therefore, that was not, I would not say that it was the best time, but it was again a very big learning experience because. When a bank is going through such a serious credit crisis, and while India was technically still a very small business, but when it's a global bank, most of the decisions which are taken globally also impact you in India. So it was a pretty, I would say, harsh time. But given the fact that Citi in India actually was a pioneer of many, many things digital. So I don't know if or many of you know, but right from the advent of ATMs to credit cards to just pure the whole home loan processing, Citi Financial, all of these are pioneers done by Citibank themselves. And then the rest of the world in India caught up. So whether it's about processes, whether it's about products, I think there is no place like Citi which can ground you in terms of your understanding of financial products. So for me, that was an amazing time because I started my journey as a product manager in cards. I was a credit card product manager. I used to manage the Shoppers Stop co-brand credit card. So I don't think it exists anymore, or even if it does, it's now under Axis. But again, the workings of a PNL of a card. How do you actually track your NPAs? How do you manage your portfolio? How do you do card promotions, card spends? How do you acquire cards? And how do you work with DSAs? There used to be a large DSA called Andromeda that we used to work with. But anyway, long story short, as a 20 to 23-year-old, learning about the PNL of a cards business, I think was a big one. And only City actually gave you that kind of exposure back in the day. And then in that management program, I sort of did multiple stints. So I did a stint in banking product where I used to manage the Citibank's wealth management arm for their mutual fund products. So, onboarding new mutual funds, reviewing funds that we can recommend to our clients. So again, it gave me a different perspective on wealth management. And then I sort of switched over to transaction banking. Now, again, that was a very, very different, space because the retail bank, again, as we all know, caters to consumers, while corporate bank and transaction banking caters to small, medium, large corporates. So their needs, their understanding, like their requirements was very different. I joined the cash product team. For those who don't know that what that means, it's basically the team that creates products on payments, collections, and liquidity. So basically everything that deals with how money movement happens between corporates and how you can optimize for their funds, I was part of that product team. So again, a very enriching experience because around that time, which was around 2014-15, was the time when, of course, NPCI was launching new products. There was NACH that came up. UPI was just seeing its initial buds. So we were pretty much in the thick of things in this tier co, and we could drive a lot of interesting innovation with our corporates at that point of time. So that's where really that bug of digitization sort of hit me also. And while I was managing a client known as PayPal, they kind of had an interesting opening, which was to launch the India domestic business. And I thought, why not? It is seemingly like the right time. Demonetization had just kicked in. And I really thought like a big brand like PayPal, with the kind of expertise that they have in global payments, it would be a really big winner even in the India market. So I moved on to that. I did that for about 3 years. Of course, COVID happened. So a lot of changes happened even for global companies, especially the ones like PayPal. And then I moved on to Pine Labs. So I've been here now for the last 4 years. I manage the online and omni-channel business, as Amit called out. So basically, everything to do with online checkout that is not terminal, that folds into me. So that is, again, it's a new business for Pine Labs. It's a business which we set up about 4 years back when I joined. And that's been my journey with Pine. So yeah, it's been a combination of multiple roles, as Amit pointed out, across banking, across fintech, both global and Indian companies. And I can't wait to see what the future holds for me in Pine Labs now.
Very interesting. I think Pine Labs, largely has been known, for as far as I remember, it's more like offline POS kind of ecosystem that they have built in India for so long, right? And they are the masters of the game. For them to transition into something which is an online, and you being at the helm of the affairs there, how difficult it was or how easy it was for you, right? And also at the same time, would want to understand, like, few of the key initiatives that you have taken at Pine Labs to understand more, about the business that you do there.
Yeah.
And what are the key learnings? What are the outcomes of that? So could you throw some light on that?
Yeah, no, I would love to. And again, it's a topic very close to my heart because it's a business that I've literally taken from 0 to 1, and hopefully now we're already at 10. But so, I came in about 4 years back, and online PA and online payment gateway, as we all know, is a highly crowded market. There are already large incumbents sitting there with more than, 25-30% market share each. So when I sort of came into this particular sphere, my obvious thing to do when I joined in was, how do we build this product, what product do we build which differentiates us, and how do we achieve distribution. So really my first few I would say time that I spent within Pine was to just arrive at that. And really, there is enough differentiation as we went and spoke to clients, both omni-channel clients who are with us offline, who want to go online, online first accounts as well. There is enough meat in the market to chew, and there is enough differentiation that one can create. The basic I would say need for any merchant in the online payment gateway space is a good success rate, a product which has a good onboarding. So obviously you don't want to deal with terrible service even while you're getting onboarded. Continuous service which is working well and which adheres to their requirements, and of course innovation that keeps them ahead of the curve so that they don't have to worry about payments, and payments is a problem that we solve for. So we sort of attracted, or rather we attacked each one of these problem statements and solved for that, whether it's on the SR front, whether it's on the boarding front. I can tell you even today boarding is still a broken experience across PAs, and obviously we have to adhere to regulations. So we have done certain things which we believe will be helping us differentiate even in the boarding space. SR success rate, as we all know, it's a paramount importance for the merchant. He doesn't want to lose a single transaction. There is enough and more, avenues to improve success rate, whether it's in cards, whether it's in UPI, EMI, for example. And then how do we really differentiate ourselves, right? So one of our biggest moats in the market when it comes to online, when it comes to the offline business, is the EMI pay later business. And now that's such a powerful business for any merchant who actually wants to attract more consumers, because we're giving them avenues for credit. We actually just used that product and brought it to the online space. And that saw us through our initial phase, because that was a big deal clincher for a lot of clients, mostly enterprise, because they were actually looking for solutions like Pine Labs in the online world, and no one really at that point of time had them. So that's really, for me, the first way where I achieved a GTM in the market, because we also achieved product market fit with this kind of a moat. And it was such a powerful moat that people latched on to the business. And then from there on, the problems that we had was mostly about distribution. How do we attract the right set of enterprises? Should we go into SME or not? The typical problems that anyone who's trying to get into a new business would face. So we were very clear from the beginning that we will attract enterprise merchants first. We want to get to a scale. We want to solve for large merchants. We want to make sure that we're actually at that kind of a quality, and then we would go to the mid market and the long tail merchant base, because again the needs there are significantly different from what an enterprise would need. And once we solved for enterprise, we believed we could solve for the small merchants as well. So our big focus therefore at that time was just making sure that our service is up to date, our product works, our success rate works, and we have the differentiation that makes us unique in the market. The other important thing that which again something which is unique to what I did, was the whole omni-channel experience, whether it's a common platform. Now, for example, a merchant like a Chroma or a Reliance or a Vijay Sales are present both online and offline. Obviously we all know them from the offline presence, but they also want to grow in the online business. Now when they want to grow in the online business, they definitely want a partner who understands their need from offline and replicates it in online. They also want the capability to make sure that their reconciliation, their transaction data, their analytics, and finally their service management is uniform. So what we created was an omni-channel journey, right from service to reconciliation. So everything just sort of then made the whole like the conversation and the product with the merchant far stickier. So I feel like even if it's a very crowded space, there is still a lot of meat to chew, and there is not everything is still solved for, and there is still scope for people to keep improving. And that high of even doing a 1 bips or a 2 bips better than competition and bringing in that wow factor for the merchant, that really kept us going. So I think that was one of our big wins, the ability to attract the best merchants and still drive differentiation. But also importantly, how we built it. So one of the things that I feel really good about is that the team that we built is again a grounds up team. We didn't really inherit a Pine Labs team. When I joined, we were like 4 or 5 people at best in the team. Now today I have a total team size of about 120, which includes product, tech, operations, sales. So it's still a small lean team. Having said which, it was a team that we literally hired, each person by person. And I'm sure you also understand it, Amit, because you've done this journey yourself. So that ability to build the team from grounds up, hire the right people. And honestly, it's a hit and miss. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, but just that ability to get the right set of team together, the right kind of curious people, the builders who are willing to roll up their sleeves. And I really learned that, while we were doing this from grounds up, because uh, it's very different when you join a Pine Labs and the expectation is that okay, everything is ready, but they don't realize that it's actually not Pine Labs, it's a startup. So we actually had to do a lot of work when it came to hiring people. But again, it was a wonderful experience because the folks that came in and the folks that are with me, they've actually been with me for like 3 4 years themselves. So they themselves want to see through the success and they themselves want to see through the journey. So that for me is really fulfilling, to give everybody else the same kind of experience and the same kind of joy that I have seen in making this business happen. So yeah, that would be what we did in the last
There is
few
a
years.
there's a benchmark also, right? So there's a benchmark that Pine Labs would have set in an offline business, right? And to cope
Correct.
with the benchmark and deliver to the standards, meeting those SLAs, at times. So it's a lot of
Correct.
responsibility and accountability at the same time. I'll move to the
Exactly.
next question now. So this is regarding, fintech in India, we would have seen and you would have been there in thick and thin of it. It has evolved immensely in last 10, 15 years, right?
Yeah.
And the kind of path-breaking products, especially with NPCI, the kind of products that they have come, I think, I truly believe that they have been the biggest innovators in the game who have helped fintechs like us to, become better at what we do. I think especially UPI or a eNACH, right?
Yep. Yep.
And the next set of wave that what I see and what I perceive from a cashless standpoint, I see a lot of things coming. What is your view, the way this sector is evolving, and where are we headed to? And what is that we should aim in next 1 decade? Where should talking about India, talking about fintech? I think what is the evolution that you see from a national progression? That should happen.
Yeah. No, I think great point and great question. So Uh, if you ask me, the domestic, and I'll split it into domestic cross-border because again, there are two different nuances to the way the industry is shaping up. But if you talk about core domestic payments processing, I think that part is wonderfully addressed by fintechs and by all the participants in the ecosystem today. The way our payment experiences, and given that I've seen the PayPal experience also, there is really no comparison to tech like UPI in the market anywhere else in the world. So there are people, obviously there is like a Pix and there are RTP products, but it is still not as seamless. It still doesn't have participation from digital fintechs like the way we have in India. It's still very controlled by banks. So I think the way we've created an ecosystem which is interoperable, which has all participation from market players, and which is seamless and invisible. Because if you think about it, and this is something that I again had learned in PayPal, because every time they used to roll out a product, the first thing that they used to say is that the best experience is no experience. So if you're doing a checkout, how quick, how fast, how efficient, and can you avoid as many hoops as possible? So I think we have addressed that beautifully in the domestic payments rails and the way we've addressed this with UPI. Even on the cards front, for that matter, with tokenization, I think, and I'm guessing that some of the innovations there are still coming up, like one-click checkout, etc. When that happens, it will truly be seamless and truly be fast. What I think now in the next sphere of things will happen again is the ability to personalize. So how would I be as a partner to a Reliance be able to show up personalization for an Amit versus a Tanya based on what he or she decides to shop and he or she has shopped in the past? Can I actually customize my experience for whoever is coming on board? And can I actually do it at like population scale, the way UPI has happened? So if we can actually provide for hyper personalization in at a scale that domestic payments is, I think that would be some place where I would definitely invest in, and I know that people are as well. Second piece which I definitely think is the omni-channel experience. I would definitely make sure that most corporates and most clients and most consumers also would want to go with the omni-channel experience. They would want a single client profile, they would want data which is aggregated, and they wouldn't want to deal with distributed sets of data. Last but not the least, in the domestic payment space, I would say specifically the need to offer credit solutions more efficiently. So beyond the cards ecosystem also, there are shoppers, and there is a consumption pattern that we need to tap onto with better credit disbursement solutions. Now, of course, with the entire credit cycle going the way it is, it may see its ups and downs, but I feel even the journey of credit can be heavily, I would say, democratized. It can also be heavily digitized. Now, I know that there is some work happening on the ULI front on that, but maybe that's the solution for it. But I definitely see innovation that needs to happen and should happen in that. On the cross-border space again, I feel like that is again a white space, and merchants are wanting better success rates. Merchants are wanting better similar efficiency that we've brought in the domestic payment space internationally as well. How can I move money faster for them? I think that's another space where we will see more investments, and we should try and make this more efficient even in the cross-border space, not just for B2C, sorry, not just for B2B, but even for B2C solutions. Recurring payments again is another investment that that I think will be big, especially in cross border. So I still feel the whole experience of me trying to purchase a subscription for New York Times is completely broken, and there needs to be an efficient way of managing those subscriptions. I also feel like maybe our entire domestic payments processing also should have a efficient collections mechanism beyond just UPI autopay. So we need to think about that as well. The whole cards SI program could do with more efficiencies. And then, as far as payments is concerned, I would say these are the things that come to my mind. But I definitely think there is efficiency in settlements. I think that's one problem which most merchants struggle with, and really, it is not democratic today. It is really dependent on which service partner they choose, right? I mean, someone will give it a T0, someone will give it a T+1, someone gives it a T+10. There is no uniformity. So I think settlements and how you can make them more efficient. Again, it could be a balance sheet or a funding solution, or it could just be faster money movement. Whatever that be the case, that should also be a big investment. So these are some of the trends that I feel that people should invest in and look into.
Valid point and very good points, Tanya. I think innovations in India, as the last point that we spoke about. I mean, they have gone in less 10 years. We have seen, I mean, huge paradigm change in terms of the way consumer used to behave, the way merchants used to behave. I mean, I remember a couple of incidences of my own. I remember one of them where I was showing, I was there in Tower of London and showing UPI there to a
Yeah,
lot of Visa and Mastercard people. And when I showed them how the UPI checkout was, they were totally amazed because for them to understand how a cardless transaction works
yeah,
is another world for them,
unheard
another
of.
world.
Yeah, true that.
Yeah, unheard. That was year 2019 I'm talking about, right? So that was totally unheard of. And you're totally zapped. Like, boss, what is this? I mean, is this the way? And Razorpay at that time, one of the few early risers there in UPI space, I think was able to capitalize on that very well and move forward with
Yeah.
that. I'll move
Oh,
to the next
Amit,
question.
incidentally, sorry, just wanted to share one more interesting one that I've seen. So, I think NPC also touched upon it very briefly in the GFF last year. But there is an interesting concept which is doing the round, which is the token framework for every transaction flow, the whole identity tokens framework. So, if you could just tokenize my identity itself and you could therefore match it with payments, everything else will actually be secure and it will flow through seamlessly. So even that's one thing which I feel that both, I mean, whether it's on UPI, whether it's on cards, we need to think about that part as well and create a unified tokenized framework for for
Yes,
consumers.
that will solve for a lot of frauds also in that case, which
Exactly,
happen.
exactly,
Biggest challenge that fintechs are facing right now. I'll move
correct.
to the next question, Tanya. So, as innovations have moved, so has regulations, right? So we have been moving in and out for the last 5, 10 years with innovations and regulations going hand in hand.
Yeah,
The tailwinds that we feel from regulators at times, and personally, that is my understanding that most of these things, at a grounds up level, if I see, probably I react to it. But if I see at a Uber level, I see there is a lot of maturity in that way of thinking in which the regulator behaves the way they do,
yeah.
right? So, what is, I mean, how you handle these tailwinds and what is your learning of these scenarios, be it the multiple guidelines which has come, over a period of say next, last 3, 4 years, and few are already in the pipeline. So, how do you
Yeah.
see all of these evolving in our kind of landscape where digitization is at its best, people are moving. I think, huge chunk of people are already moved on to smartphones. The usage
Yeah.
is pretty high,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, the way UPI has pervaded is humongous. Frauds are on the rise. So all these scenarios put in together, how do we handle these kind of situations, and how do you navigate through these challenges?
Yeah, I think, first of all, the fact that you called it a regulatory tailwind itself, speaks for itself. So if you follow the path of the way we've seen regulations in the country, they've always attempted to protect the end consumer. So if you think of that regulation from that standpoint, firstly, it always makes sense. And once you keep that at center stage, it always brings method to the madness. So for me, regulations have always been a tailwind to the business. It's never been a headwind, if you ask me, honestly. And it has only made your business stronger, more secure, and brings in more trust. I mean, come to think of it, and I always draw parallels with my banking stint, right? There was a reason why banks are still the most trusted entity in across multiple financial businesses, and that's because they are highly regulated, and there is the method to everything that they do, and it is all extremely secure. So, and very rarely you hear of bank runs, right? And that's because of the regulations. So, if you think about it, even in fintech, that's exactly the logic with which you should run. And I'll talk about everything. So if I, when I started out at least with PayPal, the first big regulation that hit us was, I think, the localization regulation. So obviously, for a very large client which is global like a PayPal, it was a very big setback for them, because obviously they host data outside of India. They needed to host a copy of it in India, delete the data from overseas, all of that, which was a requirement. But in hindsight, actually, if you think about it, now with the whole Data Protection Act, you're going to have to do it anyway. You're not going to have to be, you are not going to be able to, share this data alongside, even if it is within the same company. So one is that if you're protecting the end consumer, a data localization framework makes a lot of sense, because you're making sure that the data remains within the country of the residents. Then, if you think about the whole PAPG guidelines, again, from my vantage point, I was never a regulated entity until PAPG happened. So, the upside to it is was it that it was always the bank who used to front end regulations, but the downside was that it was only the banks who used to front end regulations. So, we actually got a seat at the table to navigate through the regulations and to make a regulation work for your business. So, in fact, the PAPGA legitimized the whole aggregator space. It made sure that merchants got the trust that if you are processing funds to an aggregator, you will get it in X time. Aggregators had to follow guidelines vis-a-vis onboarding, vis-a-vis settlements, vis-a-vis risk management. So it just brought in a lot of legitimacy to my business. When it comes to PACB as well, the same logic applies. Cross border is a very, very, I would say, high risk space, because the frauds can be, if not controlled, can be, spiral out of a company into bankruptcy, right? So again, it brought in method to the madness. It brought in a way again where we could settle correctly, where FX conversions could be done, how the bank's role was versus what the PA had to do. So again, I think it all works. Even the way AA has turned out, right? The seamless way in which you're able to collate data, the way it is secured, your data is secured. Your tokenization framework, which again enables, makes sure that your card data is always secure. There is no sharing of that card with anyone, including your own data with another merchant. So I believe that if you create products which are compliant and follow the regulations, you're only insulating yourself from any issues in the future. And a lot of setbacks that I've seen in the past, like in the last few months, specifically in the financial services space, has only been because we've assumed a certain gray area could work, but it doesn't. And those are the reasons because of which there have been setbacks to those companies also. So I personally feel like that banking hat, if you apply here and you assume that if this were a bank, could you have done it? And if the answer is no, probably you should not do it. So yeah,
Yeah,
that
that's
would
what RBI,
be on it.
that's what, I mean, RBI also keeps us telling, that if
Correct.
there is anything which is gray, it's a clear cut no.
Correct.
So
Exactly. Exactly.
whenever I interact with the industry friends, and whenever we speak about these things, especially the regulation and innovation, I have a very
Yeah.
simple line to say to these people. The line is that they have brought process to the innovation. That's what they have been doing.
Exactly.
So I
Exactly.
think they're not
Exactly.
innovating; they are bringing the process to the innovation. So I'll move
Absolutely.
forward with the next question. So this space, especially transaction banking, you've been part of this in your Citibank
Yeah.
journey. How do you see this space evolving, especially with the offerings around current and escrow accounts? Escrow accounts with people like us, we are trying to kind of revolutionize this space with our offerings and building CRM tools on top of that. And how does the future hold for these kind of products? What's your view on this?
Yeah, see, I mean, again, when I joined transaction banking, which was in 2012 in City, and I was there till about 17, that space itself, we saw demonetization happen, right? And at that point of time, honestly, I would say no bank was prepared to handle the kind of digitization that was supposed to take place. So I would say that the traditional cash and trade transaction flow, where banks were like, what were our solutions? Our solutions used to be on liquidity. Our solutions used to be check pickup, cash pickup, some sort of reconciliation or electronic payments. It pretty much, I would say, it is changed considerably from where they were start from where I at least was there to even 2017, because that's when things like NACH came in, recurring payments happened, UPI happened. So one is that a transaction banking, the traditional format, especially in the cash management space itself, has changed because payment methods, whether it's for corporates, and corporates obviously talk to consumers or talk to other corporates, those transaction flows have changed. And tech has brought in to make that whole money movement faster and to those who need it the most. So I feel like one has been that big change. But to truly deepen relationships with corporates, and again, I'm speaking from my old experience, because beyond just faster money movement and improved returns, because that itself is the gamut for any company to move to another bank, right? We have to address things like safety, security, trust. So there is a reason why Citi would win a certain RFP with an MNC client, because of the trust that they brought in, handling geographies, multiple geographies, that they would do across that client for them, and handle multiple sets of businesses. So I feel like if one could solve for safety, security, trust in traditional cash management solutions and bring it digital, that for me is a winner product. And then, of course, you have things like streamlined reporting, tracking capabilities, integrations with existing systems. I think that everybody else can do. So when it comes to trust and security, I think solutions like escrow solves for exactly that. So, while we would have solved for very niche use cases, and I'm sure when you launched Castle also, it was exactly that. It was a niche use case that you wanted to solve for. You wanted to bring in more trust into that transaction flow. But I see that to be used in many more use cases, whether it's domestic, whether it's cross border, whether it's slightly higher risk solutions in jewelry, in marketplace, gaming, real estate. I mean, really, the list for me is many. So the more sort of, were you saying something?
No, I'm saying plethora of use cases. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like a plethora of use cases, and bringing in an escrow sort of solution to these kind of use cases just makes the transaction far more secure. And if you make that far more secure, people will transact more, and corporates will adapt to it more. The other thing I want to say is that, again, escrow has always been a very big domain of banks. So companies like yourselves have actually made it simpler for folks to not go via the traditional banking channel but work with you while you still have a bank underneath it. So I would say that the future for solutions like escrow is extremely bright, because you all are bringing in trust, you all are bringing in safety, you all are bringing in reporting, you all are bringing in all the magic that a tech brings, that a tech platform brings in streamlining, age old processes. But you're also bringing in the element of trust. And that is making the transaction far more secure. So just adding more use cases and innovating on that, I think would take more transactions into this foray, and more customers, corporates will adopt to it. So I feel like we should create solutions that cater to every single type of corporate and every type of money flow, ranging from
Right.
like a total digital corporate to someone who is heavily non-digital, a manufacturing entity or a PSU or a government entity or an energy business. I think that's where I would say, one should invest into.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So knowing this side of Tanya, now I'll move a little bit on other side of Tanya. Okay.
Sure.
So other side of Tanya, apart from work, which is how do you keep yourself occupied? I mean, you have a son, Agastya,
Yeah,
and your I think Marathi music. How does it? I mean, how do you keep yourself busy with these things, and what impact these things have in your lives in terms of
yeah,
uh, recreating something new every day, because working at times and high pressure jobs, they become monotonous also at times over a
yeah.
given period of time. These things are very imperative that you should build on these things, and your family, your friends, your passion. I think these things are very, very important. So how do you think, I mean, these things, keep you charged up, and in what
Yeah.
shape and form?
No, I think they genuinely add value to my life. So I feel like, and I'm sure most of us agree that you should not be a one-dimensional human being, right? Someone who is working nonstop, and of course, there are passionate people who would only do that. I feel like that is a recipe. At least for me, it's a recipe for burnout. So there have been times when I've worked 16, 18 hours and I've felt great, but I don't think that 16, 18 hours, and you know how it is when you are in a journey. It's not a marathon, right? Sorry, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. It takes a lot of time to get success. So I would say that it brings the balance that you would need to sustain in the marathon, and that takes a lot of a not just physical stability but emotional stability as well. And therefore my passion for music honestly came in because of that, because I felt like there needed to be an out to to my work stress as well. And it gives you a creative stimulus, and
I've
believe
heard
me.
that you have found a partner also in music.
Absolutely. And something, and obviously, I believe in this left brain, right brain stimulus. I believe the creative side also, if you can sort of kick that in with something that
Very
you're doing,
important.
it impacts your work positively. It makes you
Yes.
far more rounded in your decisions as well. And there is a factor known as EQ, right? There's a reason
And
why
most of the
EQ is
time,
so
I think,
high.
Tanya, what I feel, it brings the humane side of you as well, right? Into
Absolutely.
the That's very important.
Absolutely.
So personally, I do a lot of poetry, right? But that's nothing to do with what I
Exactly.
do in this business.
Exactly.
Different forms
Exactly.
altogether. It brings a lot of
100%.
positivity.
It only makes me a better human being. It makes me a better leader. It makes me someone who's more empathetic towards other people as well. And last but not the least, I think I have become more how do I put it, more productive than what I was before. I started to do this full-fledged. So earlier it used to be like something I would do once a week. I've actually made it a daily habit now. So no matter what I would do, even if I reach home by 9:30, 10, I would still make the time to do that end of day. So,
Perfect.
and to pursue that, it itself makes me de-stress. So it really depends. Like you have a poetry thing, I have something to do with music, someone else will have something else. But having that one thing, or maybe multiple things outside work, which is nothing to do with work at times, can stimulate you differently at work.
Definitely. Can we get to hear one line of your rendition?
Oh God, no.
Without
We'll
any
do it some
instruments.
other time. We'll
Perfect.
definitely
No
do it
worries.
in person, Amit. I promise you.
Done. Done. All right. Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Tanya, for sparing time and giving your thoughts. I mean, they were like immensely useful for a lot of our viewers who will be, learning a lot of things from you through this video. So thank you so much again for sparing time, and look forward to meeting you in person very soon. Thank you.
Absolutely, my pleasure. Thank you.
Bye.